Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly AgWeather update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. I'm going to take you back to yesterday on Sunday afternoon, where we were watching what was left of Tropical Storm Claudette move through the Carolinas, eventually by this morning getting offshore. But as we watch this animation into the evening hours, I want you to keep more of a national perspective here. So here was some of our heavy precip from Claudette, but there was a frontal boundary stretched right in through here that's going to slowly advance toward us this week. And as you can notice in the overnight hours, quite a bit of thunderstorm activity along that frontal boundary. And by the way, all of this is smoke and haze from the western U.S. wildfires. Now in the overnight, so this is infrared satellite imagery here, we can see that through parts of Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, getting into Indiana and Michigan, we brought in some heavier rainfall. And then as the sun rose this morning, we could see what was left of Claudette finally leaving our shores and then heading here across this part of the North Atlantic, along which it proved some pretty rough seas and some stronger winds. But this week, there will be frontal boundaries that will come up on lows, just like the one we're watching this morning. They're going to curl into the Hudson Bay. There's the first one. There will be a second that comes through. I'll show you in a few moments. And these fronts just slowly move their way toward the Carolinas, which means overall, to be honest, through the next 4 weeks, we do see wetter than average conditions for us here along the eastern seaboard. I want to get into a discussion about that. Looking at just the last 72 hours worth of total rainfall here, let's see if we can get an update. There we go. Got the new data. This is valid 9 a.m. Eastern time. So we can see the effect of Claudette here in some locations putting down well in excess of 6 inches of rainfall. And as it came through North Carolina, there was a pretty sharp northern edge to where that precipitation was located. And in general, we saw rainfall amounts both in North and South Carolina that were between, half of an inch in many locations approaching 2 and a couple spots here over 3 inches of rainfall. But for those of you growing some corn and soybeans here in the Carolinas and Virginia, do take note of where we did see the widely scattered showers and storms this past weekend across the heart of the Corn Belt. And had pretty good coverage here overall, and more is expected here in the near term. Now to assess all of this, I'd like to just take a look at what June has provided, and we're going to look at some NDVI imagery here as well in a few moments. So this is June 1st through June 21st, looking at total precipitation ranks by climate district. We've been on a bit of a ride here throughout this spring, now that we've begun summer. And you can see that it's been quite wet along our easternmost climate districts. Remember, back in April and May, though, we were extremely dry. So this has been a pretty dramatic shift overall. But just take note, even where some of the rains came through this weekend, we need a lot more throughout the primary corn and soybean belt, especially the western part of it, to really make up for some long-standing drought issues. And speaking of drought, this was our new drought monitor released last Thursday. And while the drought improved across the Carolinas here dramatically, this is a corridor in through here we're going to continue to watch. And of course, we don't expect much improvement across the west, given that it is the dry season. But the western United States drought issues are very serious. And just to make a point here, in California, there's a couple of very large reservoirs in Northern California, Lake Shasta and Lake Oroville, and they're currently sitting about 35 to 40% of full pool. So the water situation there is going to continue to get worse. But let's go ahead and look at the change map just so we can get some perspective on this. And in the 1 week change, we can see we had up to a 1 class improvement. But if we look back over the last 8 weeks, what's good is we're eroding away that broader scale drought that's been in that area. So some positive news there overall, although it has come at the expense of some locally heavy rains as of late. Now I'd like to take a look at a couple of different maybe views of crop health. And we're going to do that first with an NDVI set of images here from the satellite called Terra. It's MODIS on Terra, excuse me. So we're going to compare, because it's an 8-day rolling average, so the latest data would be available through June 13th, but we're going to compare last year to this year. And what you're looking at right now is last year, all right? Now, when you look at these color bars, these colors would represent healthier crop, and these down here would represent less healthy looking vegetation from space. So this is last year, and as we roll this through, we can see this year, all right? So throughout parts of the Carolinas of Virginia, a year ago, things from space, broadly speaking, looked better. And then as you roll forward to this year, that would be panel B, you can see some change. So it is what it is, and we're just going to continue to monitor this because I know the rains lately have improved things quite a bit for some folks. But overall, there is this kind of longer term issue when comparing to last year. Another way to look at it is to use this map. What it does is it uses something called a Vegetation Health Index, which not only combines NDVI, but other parameters to kind of give you an idea of vegetative health, and then it compares it to a year ago. So it's kind of the year-on-year change. Now what I want to draw to your attention is this is through June 17th, mind you. And we can see that overall, as we just noted, most places in North Carolina did look better a year ago. And that, of course, is despite some early rains. But you can see a significant portion of the Corn Belt here looking much worse than it did a year ago. So I want you to keep a close eye on that. Another way to gauge this is by looking at soil moisture. We're going to do this at two different depths. The first is the 10 centimeter, which is roughly 4 inches. And we can see where Claudette went through. We've brought in and, of course, saturated our soil into these areas. There are still pockets that missed out on the weekend rains that are still dealing with this longer-term drought throughout parts of the western Corn Belt, and this will be improving right in through here. But coming down to the Cotton Belt, especially east of the Mississippi River, we can see a lot of heavy precipitation. Let's go down a little bit farther. This is down to 40 centimeters, or roughly 16 inches, and we just get a better picture of the depth of moisture. And so, again, just talking to the corn and soybean farmers, keep an eye on this, okay? From there, why don't we talk about where this whole pattern is going? Let's get some bigger picture ideas. And we're looking at troughs and ridges. So the troughs in blue, the ridges in red. As we play this forward, what you're going to notice is that throughout much of this week, we're going to be dealing with a broader trough. I'll just pause it here on Tuesday, okay? A broader trough across the east. And then that is reinforced as we get into the weekend with another trough here. Generally speaking, across the west, there's a larger ridge, which means the Pacific Northwest is going to get very, very hot. But I want you to watch the end of this. As I play this out all the way to day 10, all right, the pattern is set up with a trough here, a ridge there. So the jet stream has to go around that, and then a broader ridge here. So it's kind of very weak waves overall. But if there is a ridge in the U.S., it seems to be anchored right in this location. And what I noticed is that beyond day 10, this ridge, which started here, I'll put an X on it, is retrograding or building to the west as it appears. And it starts to move there over, well, the Aleutian Islands. And what that does is it sets up with a pattern that looks a bit more like this. So we need to ask what this is going to do to our precipitation setup and what this is also going to do to our temperatures, as the ridge seems to be setting up here as we work our way into the month of July. So overall, during that time period, this is happening in the low levels of the atmosphere. We maintain that larger high pressure cell that's very close or north and east of Bermuda. But we know that the flow around these high pressure cells is clockwise. So at this point, I don't see anything shutting down our transport of moisture. And if that's the case, we tend to be able to extract quite a bit from that. And that's why just through the next 10 days alone, you're looking here at a map that shows the probability of getting 2 inches of rainfall, not 1, but 2 inches of rainfall. And generally speaking, we're at better than 40 to 60% across the state of getting that, with some locations along the coast approaching 80 to 90+%. So we certainly have some wetter weather that's coming, and you do notice that the eastern and central corn belts have decent probabilities as well. We expect for drought issues to continue to get worse in this section of the Corn Belt. Okay, so let's go take a look at how all of this shakes down. First of all, Claudette is going to re-energize a bit as it heads offshore here, and there are going to be some rough seas on some stronger winds because of that. But generally speaking, throughout much of this week, our net wind gusts are going to be kept generally below that 30-mile-an-hour threshold. All right, so we could get some gustier winds at times, but this is not very windy compared to what it could be. In terms of precip, I'm starting this morning at 9 a.m. East Coast time. And what we're going to watch is the first low curling up here through Ontario and Quebec and the frontal boundary associated with it. And when does that get to us? Well, we do have a chance for some scattered storms tonight, especially farther to the west. And then as we get into the overnight hours and into tomorrow, so this is 9 a.m. tomorrow morning on Tuesday, working our way through the day on Tuesday. That's going to be our best day for scattered showers and storms. And yes, the potential for some of these putting down locally heavy rainfall is there. So here we are 4 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon, working our way through the evening and overnight hours. And the first front moves offshore by the time we get into Wednesday morning. So we then get into a midweek kind of quieter time period, but more precipitation's on the way. As you've probably been following along, there's been a lot of battle between the models, and I'd like to just show you both of them. Now we're going to do this kind of on a national scale here. Let me kind of blow this up once. There we go. So we can see how this all plays out. But these are the 0Z runs from the GFS on the left and the European on the right. As we play it forward, we've seen through where that first frontal boundary comes through. So here it is Tuesday afternoon in the GFS and in the European. So we've talked about this. Higher pressure tries to come in after that, okay, which maybe gives us a bit of a drier midweek. But then as we work our way out toward Thursday, the next low pressure system curls up into the Hudson Bay. Here it is on the GFS. Here it is on the European. Okay, a lot of rain possibly coming for Iowa in the European. Notice that. But watch what that front does as we work our way in toward the weekend. Now keep an eye on the European model. High pressure out over open ocean pulls the moisture in, so scattered storms Friday afternoon. As we then get into Saturday morning and afternoon, there it is again. The front's still here, but open that moisture transport. There will be some warmth associated with this, and we could get some pop-up storms. But then as we work our way into the weekend, here we go. This is now getting into Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, then into early Monday morning. Whoops, I went too fast there. Let's try that again. Monday morning, Monday afternoon and evening, then getting into Tuesday. What we notice is that high pressure cell just keeps pushing that moisture in against that boundary. But as you notice, I've been focusing on the European because it has been the much wetter solution compared to the European model. We need to take a look at the differences so that we can understand them. Here's the European model's forecast, and you do notice that across the state of North Carolina could be wettest here in the east, with possibly getting between 1 to 2 inches of rainfall through the next 7 days. All right. But the GFS, stalling out those fronts a little bit more, gives us this precipitation pattern. Still wet across the east coast, but drier in the interior from the GFS. And I'd like to just compare the two. So when we look at this particular map, these colors will tell you in inches how much wetter the European model is, which as you can see is generally a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch wetter than the GFS, which would be these colors if it was wetter. All right. So we do notice that the models are, the European especially, is more aggressive on the precipitation, but we do have multiple chances as that frontal boundary kind of stalls out. So we have rain coming through tomorrow, get a little bit of a break midweek, and then as we work into the weekend, the chances for storms every day starts to increase all the way through next Monday and Tuesday. Now beyond that, let's take a look at what the European model suggests for week 2. In week 2, we just noticed that the whole of the East Coast down to the Gulf Coast is favored to be wetter than average. And we come back to our reasoning earlier as to why. The models continue to favor high pressure offshore, and it feeds the moisture in. And as a result, we just tend to have, better chances of increasing rainfall through this entire region. And that's been a very consistent picture in the models. And we're going to take a look at how long that's going to last here in a few moments. First, I would like to talk about temperatures because this is interesting. From June 1st to June 21st, this map shows average temperature ranked by climate district. And while we have been near normal to cooler than normal, same thing for much of the south, getting over into the southern plains. Look at how warm it's been from California clear through the Dakotas into the upper Midwest and into the Northeast. Well, watch what the temperatures do here. Monday's high temperatures. We're hot today, all right? But you can see that front, and we know that it's moving through us. So there's Tuesday's highs getting into Wednesday. So cooler middle of the week, but we dry out after Tuesday. Working our way toward Thursday and Friday, a lot of highs here in the low to mid 80s. And then as we get into the weekend, cloud cover keeps us, and chance of rain, keeps us from getting extremely hot again. So our hottest day is really today. We cool off throughout much of the rest of the week. As we look out here, just to kind of summarize all of this, over the next 5 days, we do maintain 2 to 3 degrees cooler than normal, while the Northwest is scorched. And it gets even worse for the Northwest as you get out there into the day 5 through 10 time period. Whereas we continue to see almost that same pattern we've seen throughout much of June hanging on here. Now, as we look longer term, there's a couple things I want to keep you aware of. First, let me open a new tab here. I'm going to go to the National Hurricane Center. It's nhc.noaa.gov, and I'm going to click on their 5-day graphic. Right now, there's a 20% chance of development of this easterly wave that came off of Africa and is currently sitting here. And it's possibly moving toward the Lesser Antilles. Now, some of the model forecasts are attempting to take what's left of this and just move it here across well, the Caribbean, possibly over the Greater Antilles, and maybe pulling it into the Gulf of Mexico. I just want to watch it at this point. We've got some time, but that NHC website is a phenomenal one to be keeping an eye on. By the way, Claudette is out, so we're not going to worry too much about that. But as this moves through, some of the longer range models, they did have some sort of a suggestion of bringing what was left of it into the Gulf Coast and possibly adding additional rainfall to us. But the model's ability to resolve that is limited at this point. So just keep that in mind. Let's come back to another tropical feature to be watching. It's the MJO. Now the MJO is going to be spending some time here in phases 2 and 3, 1 and 2 for the most part, as we end June and begin the month of July. There is some possibility that it pops out here into phase 3 going into phase 4 as well and gets moving more regularly. But if I hover over this is a neat thing about this site. You do notice that in the month of July, which is shown here, for phase 1 and then phase 2, it tends to not bring in a lot of warm weather. Okay, a lot of hot weather. It tends to favor near normal temperatures. But because of that Bermuda high parked off the coast, the European model, see it over there? It's just offshore. There's the circle 1020 high. We just aren't stopping this. So when I look out there, let's just flip this over now to precipitation on a 7-day window. What you're going to see here is that the models all the way out through mid-July, let me take you back real quick, okay? Here we go. So this is the beginning of July, going now through the end of the first week, into the second and third week of the month. It just continues to favor above average precipitation here. And the European model is not alone with this. This is what the CFSV2 projects. So I've got for you on top here, July 5th to the 11th, and you do see the above average precipitation. And then on bottom, this would be the 12th through the 18th. Once again, above average precipitation. So my main story here moving forward is, while we tend to avoid extreme heat through at least the next couple of weeks, maybe even beyond that, the models are giving no hint of a redevelopment of drought conditions as we move through the middle part of the month of July. And that's what we're going to be watching carefully. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you for your attention, and I will talk to you again next week. Thanks.